Well, I just wanted to start off. I mean, you may be wondering what's a PR guy doing up here at an energy conference and talking about CRC. Could I, first of all, just ask if anybody here has any role in their companies to do with PR or marketing or brand management? Okay. Well, that kind of is what I thought, and it's kind of actually useful to know, because you may be thinking, well, great, we can get some stuff in the newspapers, and so what, it's not that important. Well, having worked with Power Efficiency and having actually spoken to them about the work they're doing, and obviously we're also tapping into the press and the media, we actually feel there's a very big potential here for CRC to be an important part of your company's brand management and reputation as we go into the next 12 months. And as we go into CRC, things will start to get triggered as we go down the path towards full implementation and the legislation actually being enacted. So things in the past, you may remember the oil refinery fire in North London that happened about 5 years ago or such, or you may remember Union Carbide. We're not saying CRC has anything like that sort of implication, but anything environmentally related can have a massive dent on a company's brand awareness and its identity and people's view of it in the market. So we think with CRC this is going to be something that could be used by various people to gain competitive advantage, to attack their competitors, and actually by investors and lobby groups as a way of measuring a company. So what we're trying to suggest by my session this morning is that as you're planning CRC internally, you should actually reach out to the people internally in your companies that maybe look after brand, look after PR, look after marketing, and involve them in the process and introduce to them some of the angles that maybe we'll be covering this morning, so that as you plan CRC, you can not only make sure that you're covering the core legislative and financial aspects of it, but also looking at how you can mitigate any potential risk damage, but also maximise brand awareness and competitive advantage that this opportunity comes with the legislation, and particularly around the league tables. So if we just kind of go and look at what the implication here is, I mean, we all want to be seen these days as a green brand. I mean, it's something that everyone wants to look at. I mean, BP actually sort of got the slogan Beyond Petroleum a couple of years ago, which was actually quite clever, except of course the fact is they are actually a petroleum company. And we've also seen recent things with Exxon trying to also do their adverts on TV with their scientists. So everyone is trying to become a green company, even those that are frankly totally up to their eyeballs in the gooey stuff called oil. So it's an interesting market we're in at the moment. And the kind of people that are looking at this from a point of view of whether a company has green credentials or not are some very important people. Investors, you look at certain pension funds, certain large investment groups, they are beginning to become more ethically judgmental in how they invest in companies. Staff, many people, particularly, shall we say, the younger generations, are in many ways arguably more environmentally aware than their predecessors. Customers, they're looking to work with partners that are going to be able to add to their credentials in the market and not necessarily take away. And partners, people that you work with in your industry. And so what we're going to try to do today is just to look at what is in relation to CRC can impact your company and how you should bear this in mind when you're going forward. One little quote we've got from an industry analyst company called AMR, nothing to do with the automated meters if anyone's thinking that, is that CRC is going to be about league tables and where you are in them more than financial savings or costs. And we're going to explore that in detail as we go forward. So most people probably have some awareness of what's called corporate social responsibility. It's kind of your sort of fluffy PR work that involves sponsoring charities or having a sponsored roundabout near your office or something like that. But actually, CRC is much more hard-edged than this, and it's something you need to bear in mind. The need for compliance and to score well in the league tables is important not only from a financial perspective, but also from the point of view of how you rank in the market. Businesses will be rewarded or named and shamed depending on how they appear in the league tables. Now, whilst it's important that the league tables themselves are not being produced by DEC by way of comparing companies that are in the similar sectors or similar verticals, nonetheless, people will pull data out, and they'll probably use that in some form or another to actually either gain some competitive advantage or try to put companies in a bad light that probably are not fully exploiting the opportunities that CRC offers. And in addition to that, as I think Andrew mentioned earlier, or John mentioned earlier, the FT recently said that from the initial 6,000 companies people thought would be affected by CRC, it's now going to be 30,000 businesses, which includes what many people call SMBs. So this is a massive impact, and not just beyond the companies in the room here, but other companies that have maybe not even thought about this yet. And if you don't actually get CRC right, there is a real risk that you could lose some valuable reputation in the market. Your competition could gain ground over you because of what they say and what they can do about you. And you could also be seen in some ways as a yesterday's business. So these are sort of fairly serious things to think about when you're actually looking at your corporate planning and how you're managing your position in the market. And I guess if you didn't know by now, CRC starts now, or at least tomorrow. And you've got to start planning for success. And you've got to think about this, as I say, beyond the simple planning around the legislative compliance. You've got to think about building announcements of your compliance to CRC. You've got to create a CRC strategy, which is something that John alluded to earlier, which should be integrated. PR is sort of part of it, but it's actually your whole sort of carbon management and CRC compliance. It needs to be built into your strategy, not just something you add on later. And you've got to be seen as a leader, not a laggard. I know we had the question about how many people are trying to get some early savings in now or waiting. I think actually you've got to start planning for PR straight away and to leverage it as much as you can, both internally and externally, and understand the benefits of winning, but also the potential penalties of failure. So we said about the press talking about CRC. Well, you know, we have proof on the slide there. Journalists are really warming up to this topic now. The whole area of carbon management, energy efficiency is massive. Basically, the government is throwing billions of pounds, as Andrew just said, into 200 billion, I think was mentioned, into alternative forms of energy over the next several years. And the fact is the press is really, really interested in this whole area. So it's not just an obscure, isolated little bit of the field that people are playing in that no one's going to be interested in. If you can really work up your company as a compliant and an energy-leading company, it can have massive benefits for you commercially. And the press is following this. We already see the Royal Opera House here as an example of a semi-public body that's actually invested in CRC compliance management with power efficiency in this case. So what does it all mean? Well, essentially, you know, beware the league tables. And this is the nub of this, I think, from a PR perspective, because you have to get onto the league tables through all of the important work that we've been discussing today. But actually, when you're on the league tables, this is actually where the fun potentially begins from a PR perspective. So the CRC league tables there to design to highlight the winners and losers by sector. And as I said at the beginning, these can be used by various lobby groups to actually sort of pick apart some of the figures. And you could, for example, have one banking house attacking another banking house by saying, we have cleaner credentials. We are the company that's leading the green movement in the UK. These other big banks are not. So potentially, particularly for, I would suggest for investors, it's a big area that you've got to think about in terms of how you're seen by your peer group and by people that are important to you. Talk internally, you know, plan this at your, I don't know if anyone here, how many companies here actually have committees for CRC implementation, or whether it's simply contained at the moment within the facilities management or energy procurement parts of the company. But does anyone here have a sort of a committee of various groups within the company? Okay. And sorry, so which organisation are you from? Workspace. Sorry? Workspace, thank you very much. Okay, well this is an important... Oh, right, okay, well even... You think you do, yeah? I mean, it certainly as I think was highlighted earlier, with the legal aspect to it, it's a case of until legislation is enacted and some people maybe try to get some judgments, it's hard to preempt what actually the outcomes and the judgments will be, but you're obviously planning ahead. A few years ago, the government actually, the previous Conservative government actually set up a thing called Task Force 2000, which was to look at the digital switchover in the year 2000, when, if you remember, the digits on computers, because the way they were programmed, were going to go to 00 in the year 2000. Everyone's worried about the fact computers will all turn off everywhere. Well, in fact, that's at the time, this is actually a similar scenario where people are kind of planning in advance to get committees of people internally to plan for the publicity around this, and this is something I think for CRC is also important to do. So think about this internally as part of your planning, and plan to how to exploit success. Don't just think about the issues around failure, but think about how you can maximise your reputation in the market. Plan to deflect and refocus from poor ratings. Again, crisis management is probably something we don't want to talk about today, but think about if you do have issues with your planning, one, involve a company like Power Efficiency and trying to manage that directly, then also plan your PR and publicity around that so you can deal with the positive aspects of what you're doing. Refocus on things like certain energy initiatives that you have, plan on success that you can talk about your compliance with the scheme. And basically bring in communication and carbon management professionals and create a CRC strategy. So really, really think about this, because I think we're all going to be rushing from today thinking about the actual narrow band of compliance here, but do try to think about the wider picture as you go forward. So some PR success tactics. And again, I'm aware that this may be something that for most folks in the room here is outside of your immediate remit, but at least if you can bear this in mind, it may help your internal discussions. Think, for example, about a press release announcing your CRC compliance early on. Create a corporate CRC strategy to maximise benefits. You can do a letter or press release to investors announcing your success in the scheme, and you can talk about your place in the league table ratings. Use your corporate website in newsletters. Use a company boilerplate on press releases, and make sure that CRC success is an integral part of your corporate strategy and messaging. Normally when people from a blue chip company give a presentation at an event like this, they will normally have something at the front that most of them don't particularly like, but they have to do it anyway, on who they are and what they do as a company. Think about those things like that where you can actually throw in early on your success and compliance with CRC. Talk about the benefits for your customers. And also, within boundaries, exploit weaknesses of your competitors. Discuss this internally before you do anything, health warning, but if you do feel that you've got some room for manoeuvre where you can maybe make some competitive gain over some competitors that maybe are behind you in this area, see what you can do. So basically, there's some things you can do early on that are not necessarily going to cost you a huge amount of money. They're going to be a byproduct of your work and your success in CRC, but you're going to be maximising the amount of commercial success you can have by the good work you're doing on the actual business end of the function here. So I suppose in summary, ensure that CRC is a major part of your PR and communications planning for 2010. Be aware of its threats and benefits. So if you do think you're going to have issues with your compliance, flag it to your communications team, talk about your concerns, see if you can come up with a plan to help. Be aware of the interest and awareness that CRC is going to get and that it's going to grow and develop as we go forward into 2010. But try to view it as a positive advantage and something you can really develop a lot of commercial advantage around as you go forward and as a vehicle for positive news and awareness.